Close your eyes and imagine the echo of footsteps on polished floors, the gentle hum of fountains, and that unmistakable scent of cinnamon rolls drifting from the food court. This was the heartbeat of America for decades, the shopping mall. Welcome back to Midnight Deep Dive, where we explore the fascinating stories behind the everyday places that shaped our world. Tonight, we're wandering through the corridors of mall history, from their revolutionary beginnings to their nostalgic decline and surprising rebirth. I hope you've had a lovely day, and if you're settling in for the evening or getting ready for bed, you're in exactly the right place. Maybe some of you even spent time in a mall today. If so, I'd love to hear about your favorite memories in the comments below. Now get comfy, dim those lights, and let's take a gentle stroll through the story of malls. Those climate-controlled wonderlands that became so much more than places to shop. Chapter 1: The Birth of Mall Culture. To understand the modern shopping mall, we need to travel back thousands of years, to dusty marketplaces where merchants spread their wares under colorful awnings. Picture the ancient Greek agora, where citizens gathered not just to buy olive oil and pottery, but to debate philosophy and share gossip. Or imagine walking through a medieval European market square, the cobblestones worn smooth by countless footsteps, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread, and the calls of vendors hawking their goods. These weren't just places of commerce, they were the beating hearts of their communities. The bazaars of Constantinople, with their intricate maze of covered walkways, offered shelter from both sun and rain while creating intimate spaces for social interaction. In these ancient spaces, shopping was never just about acquiring things. It was about connecting with your neighbors, learning the news of the day, and participating in the grand theater of human society. Fast forward to 1950s America, where a visionary Austrian architect named Victor Grün was walking through one of these European market halls, struck by inspiration. Grün had fled Nazi-occupied Austria in 1938, carrying with him memories of Vienna's elegant shopping districts and covered markets. As he settled into his new life in America, he began to notice something troubling about American cities. The rise of the automobile was transforming urban landscapes in ways that worried Grün. Downtowns were becoming congested with traffic, while suburbs sprawled endlessly outward, connected by highways, but lacking any central gathering places. People were becoming isolated in their cars and their suburban homes, missing the spontaneous encounters and community connections that had defined city life for centuries. Grün had a radical idea. What if you could recreate the magic of those European market squares, but protect them from weather and traffic? What if you could design a space that was both commercial and communal, where shopping became just one part of a larger social experience? His breakthrough came with a commission to design Northland Center in Detroit in 1954. But it was his next project that would truly change the world. In 1956, Grün opened Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota, America's first fully enclosed, climate-controlled shopping mall. Walking into Southdale for the first time must have felt like stepping into the future. The central court rose 2 stories high, crowned by a skylight that bathed the space in natural light. A garden area with real plants created an oasis of green, while comfortable seating invited people to linger and watch the world go by. The temperature was a perfect 72 degrees year-round, a welcome refuge from Minnesota's harsh winters and humid summers. But Grün's vision went far beyond mere comfort. He carefully orchestrated the flow of foot traffic, positioning anchor department stores at opposite ends to draw shoppers past smaller retailers. He understood that successful retail was about creating desire, not just fulfilling it. The curved walkways and strategic sight lines meant you could never quite see everything at once. There was always something more to discover around the next corner. The psychology behind Grün's design was sophisticated and subtle. He borrowed techniques from theater design, using lighting to create focal points and mood. The central court functioned like a town square, providing orientation and encouraging social interaction. Even the choice of materials was deliberate: terrazzo floors that would wear well but still feel luxurious, handrails at just the right height, storefronts designed to draw the eye without overwhelming the senses. Gruen also understood the power of what psychologists call the third place, a space that's neither home nor work, where people can relax and socialize. He envisioned his malls as modern community centers, complete with post offices, libraries, medical offices, and even apartments. While many of these broader community functions never materialized as he'd hoped, the social aspect of mall culture certainly did. The success of Southdale was immediate and overwhelming. Shoppers flocked to experience this new form of retail environment, and developers across the country took notice. Within a decade, enclosed malls were sprouting up in suburbs from coast to coast, each one a variation on Gruen's revolutionary theme. But here's the bittersweet irony that would later haunt Victor Gruen. While he had created these malls to strengthen community connections and provide alternatives to car-dependent suburbs, they often ended up accelerating suburban sprawl and contributing to the decline of traditional downtown areas. The very success of his creation helped hollow out the urban cores he had been trying to save. Gruen himself would later express ambivalence about what his malls had become, calling some of them bastardizations of his original vision. He had dreamed of creating vibrant mixed-use communities, but instead saw too many malls become isolated retail islands in seas of parking lots, accessible only by car and focused purely on consumption rather than community building. Yet in those early days, there was something genuinely magical about the mall experience. It represented humanity's eternal desire to gather, to see and be seen, to participate in the ancient ritual of the marketplace. But now in a space that was clean, safe, climate-controlled, and designed with unprecedented attention to the psychology of comfort and desire. Chapter 2: The Golden Age. The 1960s through the 1990s marked the absolute peak of American mall culture. A golden age when these climate-controlled kingdoms became the unofficial town squares of suburban America. During these decades, malls weren't just places to shop. They were cultural institutions that shaped how Americans socialized, dated, worked, and even understood themselves. Imagine a typical Saturday afternoon in 1975. Families would pile into wood-paneled station wagons and drive to the local mall, not because they needed anything specific, but simply because that's where life happened. The mall had become the new Main Street, but one that was always perfectly lit, never rained on, and always had somewhere to sit and rest your feet. The anchor department stores, typically Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, or regional chains like Hudson's or Rich's, served as the pillars that held this entire ecosystem together. These weren't just stores. They were institutions with their own cultures and hierarchies. Walking through the cosmetics department of a major department store was like entering a perfumed palace, where elegantly dressed saleswomen in coordinated outfits would approach you with practiced smiles and intimate knowledge of the latest trends. The department stores understood that they were selling more than merchandise. They were selling aspiration, transformation, and belonging. The clothing departments were arranged like stage sets, with mannequins posed in lifelike scenarios that suggested the kind of person you might become if you bought the right outfit. The home goods sections promised domestic bliss, while the electronics departments showcased the future itself. But perhaps no demographic embraced mall culture more enthusiastically than teenagers. For suburban kids in the 70s and 80s, the mall was freedom incarnate. It was the one place they could go without adult supervision, where they could meet friends, flirt with crushes, and assert their independence through the profound act of choosing what to buy with their allowance money. The mall rat phenomenon became a defining feature of American adolescence. These were the kids who knew every shortcut through the service corridors, who had mapped out the optimal route between the record store and the arcade, who could tell you which Orange Julius employee made the smoothest drinks and which movie theater had the most comfortable seats. Groups of teenagers would spend entire weekends at the mall, moving in packs from store to store, trying on clothes they couldn't afford, sampling perfumes at the department store counters, and engaging in the complex social negotiations that define teenage life. The mall provided a safe space for these interactions. Parents trusted it because it was enclosed and supervised, while teens loved it because it felt like adult territory. The record stores deserve special mention here. Places like Sam Goody, Tower Records, or local chains became temples of musical discovery. Teenagers would spend hours flipping through vinyl albums and later CDs, listening to samples on headphones, debating the merits of different bands, and carefully deciding how to spend their hard-earned money. The record store employees, usually slightly older music enthusiasts, became unofficial cultural guides, introducing younger shoppers to new artists and genres. And then there were the arcades, dimly lit caverns filled with the electronic symphony of bleeps, bloops, and chimes from dozens of games. Here, quarters were currency and high scores were honor. The best players became local celebrities, drawing crowds to watch them navigate the complex patterns of Pac-Man or execute perfect combos in Street Fighter. The arcade was meritocratic in a way that high school often wasn't. What mattered wasn't who you knew or how much money you had, but how well you could play. Food courts emerged as another crucial innovation of this era. The concept was brilliant in its simplicity. Gather a variety of quick-service restaurants around a common seating area, creating a democratic dining space where families with different tastes could all find something they enjoyed. The food court became the mall's equivalent of the town square fountain, a natural gathering place where you could people watch while enjoying a slice of pizza or a chocolate chip cookie from Mrs. Fields. The sensory experience of food courts was intoxicating. The aroma of fresh-baked pretzels mingled with the scent of teriyaki chicken and cinnamon rolls. The visual feast was equally appealing: colorful displays of Chinese food under heat lamps, pizza spinning in rotating ovens behind glass windows, ice cream shops with dozens of flavors arranged in appealing rows. During this golden age, malls also became important sites for seasonal traditions. Christmas at the mall was a spectacular affair, with elaborate decorations, Christmas trees that touched the skylights, and of course, visits with Santa Claus. The mall Santa experience became a cherished childhood ritual, complete with professional photographers and the slightly surreal experience of sitting on a stranger's lap in the middle of a retail environment to whisper your deepest wishes. Halloween brought costume contests and trick-or-treating at individual stores. Easter meant bunny visits and egg hunts. Back-to-school season transformed the mall into a fashion show as teenagers surveyed the latest trends and parents prepared for the annual ritual of school shopping. The mall also served as an important economic institution, providing jobs for millions of Americans. For many teenagers, their first job was at a mall store folding clothes at the Gap, serving ice cream at Baskin-Robbins, or working the register at Radio Shack. These jobs taught valuable lessons about customer service, responsibility, and the nature of retail work, while providing spending money and a sense of financial independence. The mall's role as an employer extended far beyond the stores themselves. There were security guards, custodians, maintenance workers, and managers who kept these complex environments running smoothly. The mall created its own ecosystem of employment, from part-time teenage workers to career retail professionals who might spend decades perfecting their craft. For many Americans, especially those in suburban areas, the mall became their primary interface with the broader consumer economy. This was where they discovered new products, tried new foods, and encountered different cultures through the international food court vendors and diverse retail offerings. The mall democratized access to goods and experiences that might otherwise have been available only in major cities. The golden age of malls coincided with significant changes in American family structure and lifestyle. As more women entered the workforce, the mall provided a convenient one-stop destination for busy families. As suburbs continued to expand, the mall served as a central gathering point for communities that might otherwise lack a clear center. This era also saw the emergence of super-regional malls that were destinations in their own right. Places like the Mall of America in Minnesota or South Coast Plaza in California weren't just shopping centers. They were entertainment complexes that included movie theaters, restaurants, amusement parks, and specialty attractions that could occupy an entire day or weekend. Chapter 3: Architecture and Design Philosophy. The architecture of shopping malls represents one of the most sophisticated attempts in human history to engineer desire and shape behavior through environmental design. Every curve of the corridor, every placement of a bench, every choice of lighting was carefully calculated to create an experience that would encourage visitors to stay longer, walk farther, and ultimately spend more money. At the heart of mall design lies the concept of retail theater, the idea that shopping is fundamentally a performance, and the physical environment must serve as both stage and audience seating. The most successful mall architects understood that they weren't just designing buildings. They were choreographing human movement and emotion. The central court or atrium serves as the grand stage of this retail theater. These soaring spaces, often rising 2 or 3 stories high and capped with massive skylights, create a sense of grandeur that rivals European cathedrals. The effect is intentionally overwhelming. When you step from the relatively low-ceilinged parking garage into this expansive, light-filled space, you're meant to feel a sense of wonder and possibility. The skylights deserve particular attention because they solve several design challenges simultaneously. First, they flood the space with natural light, which is psychologically comforting and makes merchandise look more appealing. Second, they create a connection to the outside world that prevents the claustrophobic feeling that might otherwise develop in an enclosed space. Third, they provide a dramatic focal point that gives visitors a sense of orientation. No matter where you wander in the mall, you can always find your way back to the central court by looking for that distinctive skylight. But the skylight also serves a more subtle psychological function. By allowing glimpses of sky and weather, it creates what designers call temporal grounding, a reminder of the passage of time that prevents the dreamlike disorientation that might otherwise occur in a completely artificial environment. This is crucial because, while malls want to encourage visitors to lose track of time to some extent, complete temporal disorientation would be uncomfortable and ultimately counterproductive. The lighting throughout the mall is orchestrated with the precision of a theater production. During the day, natural light from the skylights is supplemented by carefully placed artificial lighting that maintains consistent illumination regardless of weather conditions. As evening approaches, the artificial lighting becomes more prominent, creating a warm, inviting glow that makes the mall feel like a cozy refuge from the darkness outside. Different areas of the mall receive different lighting treatments based on their function. The central courts are brightly lit to feel energizing and social. The corridors are more softly lit to encourage leisurely strolling. Individual stores can create their own lighting environments, from the dramatic spotlighting of jewelry displays to the warm, homey glow of candle shops. The acoustic design of malls is equally sophisticated, though visitors rarely consciously notice it. The hard surfaces that are necessary for durability and easy maintenance, terrazzo floors, painted walls, glass storefronts, would normally create a cacophony of echoes and noise. Mall designers combat this with a combination of strategic soft materials, potted plants, upholstered seating, decorative banners, and carefully designed space proportions that minimize unwanted sound reflection. The famous mall music isn't random background music, but carefully selected and mixed to create a specific psychological state. The tempo is usually set slightly slower than a normal walking pace, which subconsciously encourages visitors to slow down and browse more thoroughly. The musical selections are chosen to be pleasant and familiar without being distracting. The goal is to create a sonic backdrop that makes the space feel welcoming without drawing attention to itself. Water features, particularly fountains, serve multiple sensory and psychological functions. The sound of running water creates what acoustic designers call pink noise, a natural sound that masks less pleasant noises like footsteps, conversations, and mechanical equipment. The visual appeal of fountains provides natural gathering points and rest areas. And on a subtle level, the presence of water creates psychological associations with oasis, refreshment, and life itself. The strategic placement of seating throughout the mall reflects deep understanding of human behavior. Benches and chairs are positioned not randomly, but in locations that maximize their utility for the mall's commercial objectives. Seating near the central court encourages people to linger and people watch, creating the social atmosphere that makes malls feel alive. Seating outside stores allows companions to rest while others shop, extending shopping trips that might otherwise be cut short by fatigue. The famous mall maze layout, those gently curving corridors that make it impossible to see the entire mall at once, is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated aspect of mall design. This layout serves several purposes. First, it creates a sense of discovery and anticipation. There's always something interesting around the next corner. Second, it prevents the overwhelming feeling that might come from seeing hundreds of stores all at once. Third, it gently guides foot traffic past as many storefronts as possible, maximizing the chances that visitors will notice and enter stores they hadn't specifically planned to visit. The curves in mall corridors are also carefully calculated to feel natural rather than obviously manipulative. Sharp angles would feel uncomfortable and artificial, while completely straight corridors would be boring and would allow visitors to see their destination too clearly, potentially causing them to walk directly to their intended store without browsing others along the way. Color psychology plays a crucial role in mall design, though it's often subtle enough to work below the threshold of conscious awareness. Warm colors like soft yellows and peaches are used in areas where designers want to encourage lingering and relaxation. Cooler colors like soft blues and greens are used in high-traffic areas to maintain a sense of calm and order. The overall color palette of most malls tends toward neutral tones that won't compete with the merchandise displays or quickly become dated. The flooring choices in malls represent a careful balance between durability, aesthetics, and psychology. Terrazzo, the most common mall flooring material, is extremely durable and easy to maintain, but it's also chosen for its psychological properties. The smooth, slightly reflective surface feels solid and permanent, suggesting stability and quality. The speckled pattern helps hide scuff marks and wear patterns that would be obvious on solid-colored floors. Different areas of the mall often feature different flooring materials to subtly signal transitions and create variety. Carpeted areas around seating zones feel more residential and comfortable. Tile patterns near entrances and in food courts are chosen to be both practical and welcoming. These flooring transitions serve as wayfinding cues that help visitors navigate without conscious effort. The integration of landscaping into mall design serves both aesthetic and psychological purposes. Living plants improve air quality, add color and texture, and create associations with nature and growth. But the choice of plants is highly strategic. They must be species that can thrive in artificial light and controlled climates, while also being sturdy enough to withstand the inevitable interactions with curious visitors. The placement of escalators and elevators is another crucial element of mall choreography. These vertical transportation systems are often positioned to maximize visibility of retail spaces, turning the necessary movement between levels into additional browsing opportunities. The gentle ascent of an escalator provides an elevated vantage point from which to survey the retail landscape below, while the deliberate pace of escalator travel encourages observation of surrounding stores. Chapter 4: Cultural Phenomena. Malls didn't just sell products. They created entirely new forms of social behavior and cultural expression that became defining characteristics of late 20th century American life. These vast, enclosed spaces fostered unique communities and rituals that extended far beyond traditional shopping activities. One of the most endearing and distinctly American phenomena to emerge from mall culture was the mall walking club. As early as the 1960s, retirees and health-conscious adults discovered that the long, climate-controlled corridors of shopping malls provided perfect venues for exercise. What began as informal groups of early morning walkers gradually evolved into organized clubs with their own social structures, rules, and traditions. Picture the scene at 7 a.m. on a weekday morning before the stores have opened their security gates. The mall is quiet except for the soft shuffle of walking shoes on terrazzo floors and the gentle hum of fountains. Groups of seniors move purposefully through the corridors, many wearing matching t-shirts that identify their walking club affiliation. They've measured the distances between various landmarks. 3 laps around the main level equals 1 mile, and they track their progress with the dedication of serious athletes. These walking clubs became genuine communities unto themselves. Members would celebrate birthdays together, organize potluck breakfasts in the food court, and provide support during health crises or family difficulties. The mall management often embraced these groups, recognizing that they brought life and energy to the space during otherwise quiet hours, and sometimes provided special early opening privileges or designated walking routes marked with mileage signs. The mall walking phenomenon speaks to something profound about the role these spaces played in American social life. For older adults, particularly those who might be isolated in suburban homes or retirement communities, the mall provided a safe, social environment for both exercise and human connection. The familiar faces of fellow walkers, the friendly greetings from custodial staff setting up for the day, and the comforting predictability of the environment created a sense of belonging and routine that many found deeply meaningful. The Santa Claus experience represents perhaps the most elaborate and emotionally significant ritual that developed around mall culture. The tradition of mall Santas transformed a simple holiday custom into a complex theatrical production involving professional performers, elaborate sets, photographers, and carefully managed crowd control systems. The central court of a mall during Christmas season becomes a magical stage set. Enormous Christmas trees, often reaching from the ground level to the 2nd or 3rd floor, are decorated with thousands of lights and ornaments. The Santa display itself is typically a winter wonderland complete with artificial snow, candy cane striping, wrapped presents, and often animatronic reindeer or other holiday characters. But the real magic happens in the interaction between Santa and the children who visit him. Professional mall Santas are skilled performers who must be able to engage with children of all ages, from shy toddlers who burst into tears at the sight of this jolly stranger, to skeptical older kids who are testing the boundaries of belief, to teenagers who visit ironically but still feel a flutter of childhood magic. The Santa experience became a crucial family tradition for millions of Americans. Parents would dress their children in their finest holiday outfits, wait in long lines that snaked around the central court, and pay premium prices for professional photographs that would become treasured family keepsakes. The ritual involved not just the brief interaction with Santa, but the entire experience of anticipation, the festive atmosphere of the decorated mall, and the tangible connection to the broader cultural celebration of Christmas. Arcade culture flourished in the unique environment that malls provided. Video game arcades found their perfect habitat in these enclosed spaces. They needed to be easily accessible to their primary demographic of children and teenagers, but they also needed to be contained environments that parents would consider safe and appropriate. The typical mall arcade was a sensory wonderland. The moment you stepped through the entrance, you were enveloped in a symphony of electronic sounds. The distinctive bleeps and bloops of classic games like Pac-Man and Space Invaders, the more complex soundtracks of later games, the mechanical sounds of pinball machines, and the excited shouts and conversations of players. The lighting was deliberately dim, creating an atmosphere that felt separate from the bright, open spaces of the rest of the mall. Arcades developed their own social ecosystems and hierarchies. The best players became local celebrities, drawing crowds of observers to watch them achieve high scores or demonstrate advanced techniques. Games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat fostered competitive communities, where players would challenge each other to tournaments, with bragging rights and sometimes small monetary prizes at stake. For many young people, the arcade became a third space that was neither home nor school, a place where they could develop skills, gain recognition, and form friendships based on shared interests and abilities, rather than the usual social hierarchies of adolescence. The arcade was democratic in a way that few other teenage spaces were. What mattered was not how much money you had or what you looked like, but how well you could play. The fashion implications of mall culture cannot be overstated. Malls didn't just reflect fashion trends, they helped create them. The concentration of clothing stores in a single location made it easy for shoppers to compare styles, prices, and trends across multiple retailers. Window displays became fashion editorials, showing shoppers not just individual items, but complete looks and lifestyle aspirations. Stores like the Limited, Express, and the Gap pioneered the concept of fast fashion, quickly producing affordable versions of runway trends and making them accessible to suburban teenagers and young adults. The mall provided the perfect environment for this kind of rapid trend dissemination. A style that appeared in a major department store one week might show up in modified, more affordable versions in specialty stores the following week. The social aspects of mall shopping also influenced fashion trends. The act of shopping with friends became a form of entertainment and social bonding, with groups of friends serving as informal style consultants for each other. The mall provided safe spaces for young people to experiment with their personal style, to try on new looks, and to receive immediate feedback from their peer group. Mall culture also fostered the development of distinct regional and demographic fashion tribes. The mall goth aesthetic, for example, emerged from the interaction between alternative music culture and the specific retail environment of malls. Young people interested in gothic or punk styles would adapt their looks based on what was available at stores like Hot Topic, Spencer's, or local boutiques, creating distinctive subcultural styles that were both rebellious and accessible. The relationship between mall culture and teenage romance deserves special attention. For suburban teenagers in the pre-internet era, the mall provided one of the few spaces where they could encounter peers from other schools and neighborhoods. The mall date became a standard part of American teenage courtship, a safe, public environment where young couples could spend time together under the benevolent supervision of mall security and the general public. These teen romances played out against the backdrop of the mall's retail theater. Couples would hold hands while strolling past store windows, share soft pretzels in the food court, and create private moments of connection in the midst of this very public space. The mall provided a stage for the performance of young love, complete with an audience of other shoppers and the romantic ambience of fountains and soft lighting. Chapter 5: Economic Ecosystem. The economic structure of shopping malls represents one of the most sophisticated retail ecosystems ever devised. A carefully balanced organism where every element depends on every other element for survival and prosperity. Understanding this ecosystem requires appreciating how dozens of different businesses, from massive department stores to tiny kiosks, work together to create an economic engine that, at its peak, generated hundreds of billions of dollars in annual revenue. At the foundation of this ecosystem are the anchor stores, typically large department stores positioned at the corners or ends of the mall. These anchors, usually giants like Macy's, Sears, JCPenney, or Nordstrom, serve as the primary traffic generators that draw shoppers into the mall in the first place. Most shoppers come to the mall with a specific anchor store in mind, but they inevitably pass dozens of other retailers on their way from the parking lot to their destination. The anchor stores often own their own real estate within the mall, or negotiate extremely favorable lease terms that reflect their crucial role in the mall's success. They might pay as little as $5-10 per square foot annually, while smaller specialty retailers might pay $20-50 per square foot or more. This pricing structure recognizes that anchor stores are essentially subsidizing the entire mall ecosystem by providing the foot traffic that makes all other stores viable. The genius of this system lies in the complementary relationship between anchors and specialty stores. The department stores provide the broad selection of basic necessities that motivate most shopping trips: clothing, home goods, cosmetics, and shoes. But they can't possibly carry every brand or style that consumers might want. This creates opportunities for specialty retailers to fill gaps in the market with curated selections, unique products, or specialized services. Consider how this works in practice. A shopper might come to the mall to buy a dress at Macy's for a special occasion. While they're there, they might stop at a jewelry store to find matching accessories, visit a shoe store for the perfect heels, get their nails done at the salon, and grab dinner at the food court. What started as a single-purpose shopping trip becomes a multiple-store experience that benefits numerous retailers. The tenant mix in successful malls is carefully orchestrated to maximize this kind of cross-shopping behavior. Mall developers and leasing managers act like curators, selecting retailers that will complement rather than compete with each other. They might have multiple shoe stores, for example, but they'll focus on different market segments: athletic shoes, dress shoes, trendy fashion shoes, and discount shoes, so that each store serves a distinct customer base while contributing to the overall shopping experience. The food court represents a particularly brilliant innovation in mall economics. By concentrating multiple quick-service restaurants in a single location with shared seating, malls created an efficient use of space that served multiple economic functions. The food court kept shoppers in the mall longer, extending their shopping time and increasing the likelihood of additional purchases. It provided a democratic dining option that could satisfy families with diverse tastes, and it generated significant revenue for the mall through both rent and percentage lease agreements. Most food court tenants pay a combination of base rent plus a percentage of their gross sales, typically ranging from 6-10% of total revenue. This structure aligns the interests of the mall and the restaurants. When the restaurants succeed, the mall succeeds. The shared seating arrangement also creates economies of scale, allowing restaurants to focus their limited space on food production rather than customer seating. Specialty retailers developed sophisticated strategies for thriving within the mall ecosystem. Stores like Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and Spencer's Gifts created highly distinctive shopping experiences that couldn't be replicated by department stores or discount retailers. They focused on creating strong brand identities, unique product mixes, and shopping experiences that would draw customers specifically to their stores. Many specialty retailers also mastered the art of impulse purchasing. Stores near mall entrances and in high-traffic corridors were positioned to catch shoppers who weren't necessarily looking for their products, but might be enticed by attractive window displays or special promotions. The layout of these stores was carefully designed to guide customers past as much merchandise as possible, with strategically placed sale items and new arrivals to encourage browsing and discovery. The seasonal nature of retail created another important economic dynamic within malls. The fourth quarter of the year, October through December, typically generated 30–40% of annual retail sales for most stores. This created intense pressure to maximize holiday sales, while also providing opportunities for spectacular seasonal displays and promotions that enhanced the overall mall experience. Malls became expert at creating seasonal excitement that benefited all tenants. Halloween decorations and events brought families with children to the mall in October. Thanksgiving weekend marked the beginning of serious Christmas shopping. December brought elaborate holiday decorations, extended shopping hours, and special events that created a festival atmosphere. Valentine's Day, Easter, back-to-school season, and other calendar events provided additional opportunities for coordinated marketing efforts. The employment ecosystem within malls was equally complex and significant. A major regional mall might employ 2,000–4,000 people across all its stores and services. These jobs ranged from part-time positions for students to career opportunities for retail professionals. Many Americans got their first jobs in mall stores, learning fundamental skills about customer service, sales, inventory management, and workplace responsibility. The mall also supported numerous indirect jobs in related industries. Security companies provided guards and monitoring services. Cleaning services maintained the common areas. Marketing and advertising agencies created promotional campaigns. Construction and maintenance companies kept the facilities in good repair. Delivery services and logistics companies managed the complex task of getting merchandise to dozens of different retailers efficiently. For many retailers, particularly smaller chains and independent stores, malls provided access to prime retail locations that would otherwise be unaffordable or unavailable. Instead of having to secure individual leases in high-traffic urban areas, negotiate with multiple landlords, and handle their own security and maintenance, retailers could focus on their core business, while the mall management handled the complexities of operating a large commercial complex. The percentage lease structure used by many mall retailers created an interesting dynamic where the mall's success was directly tied to the success of its tenants. If a store's sales increased, the mall benefited through higher percentage rent payments. This encouraged mall management to invest in marketing, events, and facility improvements that would drive traffic and sales for all tenants. However, this same structure also created vulnerabilities. When retail sales declined, mall revenues declined both through lower percentage rents and through store closures that left vacant spaces. The interconnected nature of the mall ecosystem meant that the failure of one major anchor store could trigger a cascade of problems for specialty retailers who depended on the foot traffic that anchor generated. The rise of national retail chains during the mall boom years created both opportunities and challenges for the mall ecosystem. Chains like The Gap, Radio Shack, and Brookstone could afford to open locations in multiple malls across the country, providing shoppers with familiar brands and consistent experiences. But this also led to a homogenization of the retail landscape, where malls in different cities began to look increasingly similar. Chapter 6: International Mall Culture. While the enclosed shopping mall was fundamentally an American innovation, the concept quickly spread around the world, adapting to different cultures, climates, and economic conditions in fascinating ways. Each country that embraced mall culture put its own distinctive spin on the format, creating shopping experiences that reflected local values, social customs, and environmental needs. In Canada, malls developed along similar lines to their American counterparts, but with some distinctly Canadian characteristics. The harsh winters in much of the country made enclosed, climate-controlled shopping spaces even more appealing than they were in most American cities. Canadian malls often became true community centers, serving as gathering places during long winter months when outdoor activities were limited. The West Edmonton Mall in Alberta, which opened in 1981, took the mall concept to unprecedented extremes. At the time of its opening, it was the largest mall in the world, featuring not just hundreds of stores, but also an indoor amusement park, a water park with artificial waves, an ice skating rink, a miniature golf course, and even a hotel. The mall became a destination in itself, attracting tourists from around the world who came to experience what was essentially a small city under one roof. European countries approached malls with more caution, partly due to strong traditions of urban planning that protected historic city centers and established commercial districts. However, as car ownership increased and suburban development accelerated in the post-war decades, European developers began experimenting with American-style shopping centers. In the United Kingdom, the mall concept evolved into what became known as shopping centers, often built on the outskirts of towns and cities. These developments frequently faced resistance from local councils concerned about their impact on traditional high streets. As a result, British shopping centers often incorporated elements designed to minimize their disruption to existing retail patterns, such as mixed-use developments that included offices, entertainment venues, and public services alongside retail spaces. The Arndale Centers, built throughout England in the 1960s and 1970s, represented one of the most ambitious attempts to bring American-style mall development to Britain. These centers were often built in city centers rather than suburbs, sometimes involving the demolition of historic buildings and the creation of pedestrian-only shopping zones. The results were mixed. Some became beloved community gathering places, while others were criticized for their brutal concrete architecture and their impact on surrounding neighborhoods. France took a different approach, developing large commercial centers on the periphery of major cities while maintaining strict protections for historic city centers. French shopping centers like Les Quatre Temps near Paris or Pardieu in Lyon became massive retail and entertainment complexes that served entire metropolitan regions. These centers often included hypermarkets, enormous stores that combined grocery shopping with general merchandise, reflecting French preferences for one-stop shopping experiences. The French approach to mall food courts also differed significantly from the American model. Rather than featuring primarily fast food, French shopping centers often included traditional cafes, boulangeries, and restaurants that served proper meals with wine. This reflected the French cultural emphasis on leisurely dining and quality food, even in retail environments. In Germany, shopping centers developed more slowly due to strict zoning laws designed to protect traditional downtown commercial districts. When German malls finally emerged in the 1970s and 1980s, they often incorporated elements that reflected German values of environmental responsibility and community integration. Many featured energy-efficient designs, extensive use of natural materials, and integration with public transportation systems. Japan's approach to mall culture produced some of the most innovative and distinctive shopping environments in the world. Japanese developers took the basic mall concept and refined it with an attention to detail and customer service that was uniquely Japanese. Department stores in Japanese malls became legendary for their elaborate seasonal displays, impeccable customer service, and the practice of having uniformed staff bow to customers as they entered and left the store. Japanese malls also pioneered the integration of entertainment and retail in ways that went far beyond American models. Many featured elaborate themed sections, high-tech interactive displays, and entertainment venues like karaoke boxes, game centers, and themed restaurants. The concept of retail as entertainment reached new heights in Japanese malls, where shopping became a form of leisure activity that could occupy entire days. The basement levels of Japanese department stores, known as depachika, became legendary food destinations featuring dozens of vendors selling everything from traditional Japanese sweets to imported delicacies. These food floors represented a sophisticated evolution of the American food court concept, emphasizing quality and variety over speed and convenience. In Southeast Asia, malls became crucial symbols of economic development and modernization. Countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand embraced mall culture enthusiastically, often building shopping centers that were even more elaborate and air-conditioned than their American counterparts. In tropical climates, the appeal of cool, comfortable shopping environments was even stronger than in temperate regions. Singapore's Orchard Road became famous worldwide as a shopping destination, featuring a concentration of malls that rivaled any American city. These malls served multiple functions. They were retail destinations, social gathering places, and refuges from the hot, humid climate. Many featured elaborate interior gardens, fountains, and artistic installations that made shopping feel like visiting a museum or botanical garden. In Thailand, malls like Siam Paragon and Central World in Bangkok became massive mixed-use complexes that included not just retail stores, but also aquariums, art galleries, concert halls, and luxury hotels. These developments represented a distinctly Asian approach to mall design that emphasized spectacle, luxury, and the integration of shopping with other forms of entertainment and cultural activity. The Middle East produced some of the most extravagant mall developments in the world. The Dubai Mall, which opened in 2008, became the largest mall in the world by total area, featuring not just thousands of stores, but also an Olympic-sized ice skating rink, a massive aquarium, a dinosaur skeleton, an indoor theme park, and a fountain show that became a tourist attraction in its own right. These Middle Eastern megamalls served multiple social functions in societies where public gathering spaces were often limited. They became places where families could spend time together in air-conditioned comfort, where young people could socialize in supervised environments, and where international brands and cuisines provided connections to global culture. In many Islamic countries, malls also had to navigate complex social and religious considerations. Some featured separate shopping areas or shopping hours for families versus single men. Prayer rooms became standard features, and retailers had to be sensitive to local customs regarding clothing displays and advertising. Latin American countries developed their own distinctive mall cultures that reflected local social patterns and economic conditions. In countries like Brazil and Mexico, malls became important social gathering places for the growing middle class, offering safe, climate-controlled environments in cities where public spaces might be less secure or comfortable. Brazilian malls often featured elaborate central courts with stages for live entertainment, reflecting the country's vibrant music and performance culture. These spaces regularly hosted concerts, fashion shows, and cultural events that made the mall feel more like a community center than a purely commercial space. In many developing countries, malls became symbols of economic progress and modernization. The opening of a major mall was often treated as a significant civic event, representing the community's integration into global consumer culture and its rising prosperity. However, the international spread of mall culture also raised concerns about cultural homogenization and the impact on traditional retail patterns. Critics argued that American-style malls were displacing local markets, traditional craftspeople, and distinctive regional shopping customs. In many cities, the arrival of malls coincided with the decline of historic markets, neighborhood shops, and street vendors, who had been integral parts of local commercial culture for generations. Some countries attempted to address these concerns by incorporating local elements into mall designs. Indian malls, for example, often featured sections designed to mimic traditional bazaars, with narrow walkways, smaller vendor stalls, and architectural elements that reflected local building traditions. These hybrid designs attempted to capture the convenience and comfort of modern malls, while preserving some connection to traditional Indian shopping experiences. The globalization of mall culture also led to the international expansion of American retail chains. Brands like McDonald's, KFC, The Gap, and later Starbucks became fixtures in malls around the world, creating a sense of familiar global brands that transcended national boundaries. For many international shoppers, visiting American chain stores in their local mall became a way of participating in American culture without leaving their home country. Chapter 7: The Decline Era. The story of mall decline is not a sudden collapse, but rather a slow-motion transformation that began in the 1990s and accelerated dramatically in the 2000s and 2010s. It's a tale of changing consumer behavior, technological disruption, economic pressures, and shifting social patterns that gradually undermined the very foundations that had made malls so successful for decades. The seeds of mall decline were actually planted during the height of their success. By the 1980s and 1990s, developers had built so many malls that many markets became oversaturated. The rule of thumb in retail real estate is that a successful mall needs a trade area of at least 150,000–200,000 people within a reasonable driving distance. But as developers continued building new malls to capture suburban growth, they often ended up competing directly with existing malls for the same customer base. This oversupply created a vicious cycle. As new malls opened with more modern amenities and more convenient locations, older malls began to lose their anchor stores and specialty retailers. When an anchor store closed, it didn't just mean the loss of that particular retailer. It meant the loss of the foot traffic that anchor generated for all the smaller stores in the mall. Without that steady stream of shoppers walking past their storefronts, specialty retailers found it increasingly difficult to maintain profitable operations. The rise of category killer stores, large specialty retailers like Best Buy, Home Depot, and Toys R Us, dealt another blow to traditional malls. These stores offered massive selections within specific product categories, often at lower prices than mall-based retailers could match. They typically located in strip malls or standalone buildings with large parking lots, offering the convenience of single-purpose shopping without the need to navigate through an entire mall. The discount retail revolution, led by stores like Walmart, Target, and Kmart, fundamentally changed consumer expectations about pricing and convenience. These retailers offered many of the same products available in mall stores, but at significantly lower prices and often in more convenient locations with easier parking and faster checkout. For many families, especially those facing economic pressures, the appeal of one-stop discount shopping outweighed the social and entertainment aspects of mall shopping. But perhaps no single factor contributed more to mall decline than the rise of e-commerce, particularly after the launch of Amazon in 1995. Online shopping initially grew slowly, limited by concerns about security, shipping costs, and the inability to physically examine merchandise before purchase. However, as internet access became more widespread, security concerns diminished, and shipping became faster and more affordable. Online shopping began to capture an increasing share of retail sales. The impact was not immediate but relentless. Each year, a slightly higher percentage of retail purchases moved online. Categories like books, music, and electronics were among the first to migrate significantly to online channels, directly impacting mall stalwarts like Borders, Tower Records, and Radio Shack. As consumers became more comfortable with online shopping, the migration expanded to clothing, shoes, home goods, and eventually almost every category of merchandise sold in malls. The 2008 financial crisis accelerated these existing trends dramatically. As unemployment rose and household incomes declined, consumers became more price-conscious and less likely to engage in the kind of browsing and impulse purchasing that had sustained mall retailers. Many families cut back on discretionary spending, focusing their reduced retail budgets on necessities available at discount stores, rather than the specialty items and lifestyle products that were the bread and butter of mall retailers. The crisis also led to a wave of retail bankruptcies and consolidations that left many malls with vacant anchor spaces. Circuit City, Borders, Linens and Things, and dozens of other mall staples disappeared entirely. Surviving retailers contracted their operations, closing underperforming locations and focusing on their most profitable stores. Malls that had been marginally successful suddenly found themselves struggling to maintain occupancy levels. As anchor stores closed and foot traffic declined, a phenomenon known as the retail death spiral began to affect more and more malls. Declining traffic made it harder for remaining stores to justify their lease costs, leading to more store closures, which further reduced traffic, making it even harder for the remaining stores to survive. Mall owners found themselves caught in an impossible situation. They needed to reduce rents to keep tenants, but they also needed rental income to maintain and market their properties. The social aspects of mall culture also began to change in ways that undermined their traditional appeal. The rise of social media and online communities provided new ways for teenagers and young adults to connect with friends and peers, reducing their dependence on malls as social gathering spaces. Video game consoles and home entertainment systems became more sophisticated, providing alternatives to mall arcades. The proliferation of restaurants in suburban areas gave families more dining options than the food court. Changing demographics also played a role in mall decline. The suburban families that had been the core constituency for malls were aging, and their shopping patterns were changing. Empty nesters had less need for the family-oriented shopping that malls were designed to facilitate. Meanwhile, younger generations, particularly millennials, showed different preferences for shopping and socializing that were less aligned with traditional mall formats. Millennials were more likely to value experiences over material possessions, more conscious of environmental and social issues, more comfortable with online shopping, and more likely to prefer urban living over suburban lifestyles. When they did shop in physical stores, they often preferred smaller, more unique retailers over chain stores, and they valued convenience and authenticity over the manufactured atmosphere of traditional malls. The phenomenon of dead malls, shopping centers with high vacancy rates and declining conditions, became increasingly common and began to attract media attention and even academic study. These spaces, once bustling with activity, became eerie landscapes of empty storefronts, broken fountains, and flickering fluorescent lights. Urban explorers and photographers began documenting these spaces, creating a new genre of ruin photography that captured the melancholy beauty of abandoned retail spaces. Some dead malls became temporary venues for art installations, concerts, or other events that played with the contrast between their original commercial purpose and their current emptiness. Others were simply demolished, their sites redeveloped for other purposes or left as empty lots that served as monuments to the impermanence of commercial success. The decline wasn't uniform across all malls. High-end malls in affluent areas often continued to thrive, particularly those that successfully repositioned themselves as luxury destinations with high-quality restaurants, entertainment venues, and exclusive retailers. These A-class malls were able to maintain their relevance by offering experiences that couldn't be replicated online. Similarly, some malls in very dense urban areas or areas with limited retail competition managed to maintain their viability by serving essential community functions. But the vast middle tier of malls, those that were neither luxury destinations nor essential community resources, found themselves increasingly vulnerable to the changing retail landscape. The response from mall owners and developers varied widely. Some invested heavily in renovations and repositioning efforts, trying to transform their properties into lifestyle centers, entertainment destinations, or mixed-use developments. Others milked their remaining cash flow while allowing their properties to deteriorate, hoping to sell to redevelopment groups or waiting for market conditions to improve. By the 2010s, it became clear that the traditional enclosed mall was facing an existential crisis. Industry experts began predicting that a significant percentage of existing malls would need to close or be repurposed within the next decade. The question was no longer whether mall culture would survive unchanged, but what would emerge from its transformation. Chapter 8: Evolution and Rebirth. As traditional enclosed malls faced mounting challenges, a new generation of retail developers, urban planners, and community leaders began reimagining what these spaces could become. Rather than simply mourning the death of mall culture, they saw opportunities to transform these massive structures and valuable real estate into something new and relevant for the 21st century. The lifestyle center concept emerged as one of the most successful evolutionary responses to mall decline. Unlike traditional enclosed malls, lifestyle centers featured outdoor pedestrian areas, smaller retail spaces, and a carefully curated mix of stores, restaurants, and services designed to create a more intimate, community-oriented shopping experience. Picture walking through a well-designed lifestyle center on a pleasant evening. Instead of navigating long, enclosed corridors, you stroll along tree-lined walkways between smaller buildings that house boutique stores, upscale restaurants, and service businesses like spas and fitness centers. The atmosphere is more like a charming downtown district than a traditional mall, with outdoor seating areas, decorative landscaping, and architectural details that create visual interest and a sense of place. The most successful lifestyle centers recognize that modern consumers, particularly affluent ones, are seeking experiences rather than just merchandise. They feature restaurants with outdoor patios where diners can people watch and enjoy the weather. They include entertainment venues like movie theaters with luxury seating and restaurant service. They host regular events like farmers markets, art fairs, and live music performances that give people reasons to visit beyond just shopping. The tenant mix in lifestyle centers is typically more selective and upscale than traditional malls. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, they focus on serving specific demographic groups, often affluent suburbanites who value quality, convenience, and ambience over low prices and vast selection. The stores are often smaller and more specialized, creating opportunities for local businesses and unique retailers to compete alongside national chains. Mixed-use development represents perhaps the most ambitious evolution of the mall concept. These projects transform traditional retail spaces into complete communities that combine shopping, dining, entertainment, residential units, office space, and sometimes even hotels and civic facilities, all in a single development. Imagine an old department store anchor space that has been converted into luxury condominiums, with retail stores occupying the ground floor and restaurants and offices filling the upper levels. The former central court might become a public plaza with a farmer's market on weekends and outdoor concerts in the summer. What was once a single-purpose retail destination becomes a genuine mixed-use community where people can live, work, shop, and socialize without ever needing to get in their cars. These mixed-use developments address several of the fundamental problems that led to traditional mall decline. By including residential units, they ensure a steady population of potential customers for the retail and restaurant tenants. By including office space, they create daytime foot traffic that supplements the evening and weekend crowds. By creating genuine communities rather than just shopping destinations, They give people emotional and practical reasons to spend time in the space that go beyond mere consumption. The integration of residential units into former retail spaces has proven particularly successful in urban and close-in suburban locations. Young professionals and empty nesters often find the convenience of living within walking distance of shopping and dining very appealing, especially when combined with modern amenities and urban lifestyle features. Some of the most creative mall transformations have focused on education and community services. Former department stores have been converted into community colleges, libraries, medical centers, and government offices. These uses take advantage of the large, flexible spaces that malls provide, while serving essential community functions that generate steady foot traffic for remaining retail tenants. In Lakewood, Colorado, the former Villa Italia Mall was transformed into Belmer, a mixed-use development that includes residential units, office space, retail stores, restaurants, a civic center, and public gathering spaces. The project maintained some of the community gathering functions of the original mall, while creating a more sustainable, diverse economic base that doesn't depend entirely on retail success. The entertainment-focused transformation has proven successful for many struggling malls. By converting anchor spaces or large sections of the mall into entertainment venues, movie theaters, bowling alleys, trampoline parks, escape rooms, virtual reality centers, or family entertainment complexes, mall owners can attract visitors who come for specific experiences rather than just shopping. These entertainment tenants often generate more consistent traffic than traditional retail, since people specifically plan visits to entertainment venues rather than just browsing casually. They also tend to keep visitors in the mall longer, increasing the likelihood that they'll visit restaurants or shops while they're there. Food halls represent another successful evolution of the traditional food court concept. Instead of fast food chains serving standard fare, modern food halls feature local chefs, artisanal food producers, and unique culinary concepts that create destination dining experiences. These food halls often become community gathering places that attract visitors throughout the day and evening, not just during traditional meal times. The most successful food halls create ecosystems of complementary food vendors, perhaps a craft brewery, a gourmet grilled cheese shop, a ramen specialist, a local bakery, and a farm-to-table salad bar, that together offer a diverse, high-quality dining experience that can't be replicated at a single restaurant or traditional food court. Technology has also played a crucial role in mall evolution. Some forward-thinking mall operators have invested in high-tech amenities like free high-speed Wi-Fi, phone charging stations, interactive directories, and mobile apps that help visitors navigate the space and find deals. Others have experimented with virtual reality experiences, interactive art installations, and other technology-based attractions that create reasons to visit beyond traditional shopping. The most successful mall transformations have recognized that the fundamental appeal of malls, as climate-controlled gathering spaces that offer convenience, safety, and social interaction, remains valid. The challenge has been adapting that basic concept to changing consumer preferences, economic realities, and social patterns. Outdoor lifestyle centers work well in temperate climates and affluent markets, but may not be suitable for harsh winter climates or lower-income communities. Mixed-use developments require significant upfront investment and complex financing that may not be feasible for all properties. Entertainment-focused transformations work well for some locations, but may not generate sufficient revenue to support large retail spaces. The most successful transformations have been those that carefully analyzed their specific market conditions, demographic trends, and competitive landscape to develop strategies that made sense for their particular situations. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to mall decline, but there are many examples of creative, successful adaptations that suggest pathways forward for the thousands of struggling malls across the country. Some malls have found success by focusing on specific demographic niches, perhaps becoming destinations for seniors by including medical offices, pharmacies, and services tailored to older adults, or focusing on families by including children's entertainment venues, family restaurants, and stores that cater to parents and kids. Others have embraced their role as community centers by hosting regular events, providing meeting spaces for local organizations, and partnering with schools and civic groups to create programming that gives people reasons to visit regularly. The most successful of these efforts recognize that modern consumers, particularly younger ones, value authenticity, community connection, and unique experiences over the homogenized retail experiences that characterized traditional mall culture. Chapter 9: Pop Culture and Media. The shopping mall's influence extended far beyond retail commerce, becoming one of the most powerful and enduring symbols in American popular culture. From the moment malls began appearing in significant numbers in the 1960s, they captured the imagination of filmmakers, musicians, writers, and artists who recognized these spaces as distinctly American cultural phenomena that revealed something profound about our society's values, anxieties, and aspirations. In cinema, malls became the perfect backdrop for exploring themes of teenage alienation, consumer culture, social class, and the American suburban experience. The mall setting offered filmmakers a controlled environment that was instantly recognizable to audiences, while also being visually interesting and symbolically rich. The sterile, artificial perfection of mall environments could represent either the comfort and safety of modern American life or its spiritual emptiness and conformity, depending on the filmmaker's perspective. One of the most iconic uses of a mall setting in film was George A. Romero's 1978 horror masterpiece, Dawn of the Dead, which trapped a group of survivors in a suburban shopping mall during a zombie apocalypse. Romero used the mall setting to create a brilliant metaphor for American consumer culture, suggesting that the mindless consumption that characterized mall culture was not so different from the mindless hunger of the undead. The film's famous tagline, "When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth," took on additional meaning when delivered in the context of a space dedicated to consumption and material desire. The zombie survivors' initial delight at having unlimited access to all the consumer goods they could want gradually gives way to boredom and conflict, suggesting that material possessions alone cannot provide meaning or satisfaction. The mall that initially represents safety and abundance ultimately becomes a prison that the survivors must escape. The film's critique of consumer culture was subtle but powerful, wrapped in the conventions of a horror movie, but clearly commenting on the spiritual emptiness that some critics saw in American mall culture. Teen comedies of the 1980s and 1990s used malls as natural settings for coming-of-age stories, recognizing that these spaces were central to the social lives of suburban teenagers. Films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Valley Girl, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure portrayed malls as teenage territories where young people could assert their independence, develop their identities, and navigate the complex social hierarchies of adolescence. These films captured the genuine social dynamics of mall culture, the way different cliques claimed different areas of the mall as their territory, the elaborate rituals around shopping and fashion that served as vehicles for self-expression and peer bonding, and the mall's function as a safe space where teenagers could experiment with independence while still operating within a supervised, controlled environment. Valley Girl, in particular, used the mall as a symbol of the cultural divide between different socioeconomic groups, contrasting the sanitized consumer paradise of the suburban mall with the grittier urban environments where the male protagonist lived. The film's romantic plot was fundamentally about bridging different cultural worlds, with the mall serving as both a barrier to authentic connection and a space where such connections might still be possible. The 1995 film Mallrats by Kevin Smith took mall culture as its central subject, following two young men who spend an entire day hanging out in a New Jersey mall after being dumped by their girlfriends. The film was both a loving tribute to mall culture and a gentle satire of it, capturing the very real ways that malls functioned as social spaces for young people, while also poking fun at the consumer culture that malls represented. Smith's film was notable for its authentic portrayal of mall social dynamics, the way regular visitors developed relationships with store employees, the informal hierarchies that emerged among different groups of mall goers, and the genuine sense of community that could develop among people who spent significant time in these spaces. The film suggested that while mall culture might be superficial in some ways, it also provided real social connections and a sense of belonging for people who might otherwise feel isolated in suburban environments. Music also embraced the mall as both setting and symbol. Frank Zappa's 1982 song Valley Girl, featuring his daughter Moon Unit Zappa speaking in authentic Valley Girl dialect, explicitly referenced mall culture as part of a broader critique of suburban teenage conformity. The song's lyrics, filled with references to shopping and brand names, used mall culture as a shorthand for the materialism and superficiality that critics saw in Reagan-era American youth culture. Robin Sparkle's Let's Go to the Mall from the television show How I Met Your Mother offered a more affectionate parody of 1980s mall culture, complete with a music video filmed in an actual mall that captured the distinctive aesthetic of that era. The song was simultaneously nostalgic and gently mocking, reflecting the complex relationship that many Americans had developed with their mall-going past. The aesthetic of mall culture, its distinctive visual style, architecture, and atmosphere, became a rich source of inspiration for artists, photographers, and designers. The Memphis group design movement of the 1980s, with its bright colors, geometric patterns, and playful forms, was closely associated with the visual language of mall culture. Shopping centers provided a perfect venue for this bold, commercial aesthetic that celebrated consumer culture rather than critiquing it. Photography projects documenting mall culture became increasingly popular as these spaces began to decline. Photographers like Michael Galinski captured the peak years of mall culture in the 1980s and 1990s, creating archives of images that would later be viewed with nostalgic fascination. These photographs captured not just the physical environments of malls, but also the people who inhabited them. The teenagers hanging out by the fountains, the families strolling through the corridors, the elderly mall walkers getting their exercise in the early morning hours. As malls began closing in large numbers in the 2000s and 2010s, a new genre of photography emerged focusing on dead malls and abandoned retail spaces. Photographers like Seth Lawless and artists like Dan Bell created haunting images of former shopping centers that had been abandoned or were in various stages of decay. These images tapped into a broader cultural fascination with ruins and decline, but they also served as melancholy monuments to a form of American culture that was disappearing. The liminal space concept that became popular in online culture during the 2010s often featured images of empty or abandoned malls as prime examples of spaces that felt simultaneously familiar and unsettling. These images resonated with people who had grown up with mall culture, but were now witnessing its decline, creating a sense of nostalgia mixed with unease that perfectly captured the cultural moment. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok gave rise to new forms of mall-related content, from mall goth fashion inspiration to nostalgic photo series documenting visits to still operating malls. Young people who had never experienced mall culture in its heyday began exploring malls as retro curiosities, treating them like museums of a previous era's consumer culture. The aesthetics movement in online culture embraced various aspects of mall culture as design inspiration. Vaporwave, music and visual art explicitly referenced 1980s and 1990s mall aesthetics, using neon colors, marble sculptures, and retro-futuristic imagery that evoked the peak years of mall design. This aesthetic movement treated mall culture as a source of beauty and nostalgia rather than critique, suggesting a generational shift in how these spaces were understood and remembered. Television shows like Stranger Things used mall settings to evoke 1980s nostalgia, recognizing that malls had become powerful symbols of that era's consumer culture and teenage social life. The show's Starcourt Mall setting wasn't just background, but an integral part of the story, representing both the comfort and the danger of suburban American life during the Cold War era. The mall's role in pop culture has evolved from celebration to critique to nostalgia, reflecting broader changes in American attitudes toward consumer culture, suburban life, and community gathering spaces. Early representations often celebrated malls as symbols of American prosperity and social freedom. Later representations became more critical, using malls to explore themes of alienation, conformity, and the spiritual costs of consumer culture. The most recent representations tend toward nostalgia, treating malls as relics of a simpler time when communities gathered in shared physical spaces rather than online environments. This evolution in pop culture representation mirrors the actual history of mall culture itself. From the optimistic early days, when malls represented progress and community building, through the peak years when they became central to American social life, to the current era when they're often viewed as symbols of a lost way of life that many people remember fondly despite its limitations. As we reach the end of our gentle journey through the corridors of mall history, it's remarkable to consider how these climate-controlled spaces became such powerful symbols of American culture and community. From Victor Grun's visionary dream of recreating European market squares to the teenage hangouts of the 1980s, from the economic powerhouses that shaped suburban development to the nostalgic ruins that photographers document today, malls have been mirrors reflecting our changing relationship with consumption, community, and each other. Whether you remember the excitement of back-to-school shopping, the social rituals of teenage mall culture, or you're discovering this history for the first time, the story of malls reminds us that even our most commercial spaces can become venues for genuine human connection. As these spaces continue to evolve into mixed-use communities, entertainment destinations, and new forms of gathering places, they carry forward that original vision of creating spaces where people can come together, see and be seen, and participate in the eternal human tradition of the marketplace. Thank you for joining me on this cozy deep dive into the world of malls. I hope you found some interesting stories to carry with you into your dreams tonight. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time on Midnight Deep Dive.